So in this lesson, we're going to talk about alternate picking, and in talking about alternate picking, I'm just going to discuss a lick that we often hear in a bunch of different genres of music, but I always think it's fun if I can incorporate, a lick and a technique into the same little excerpt. I'm always willing to do that. So when I talk about alternate picking, I've, mentioned it throughout this course. It is something that develops over time, and especially with guitar playing, we never want to try to do too much at once, but the more and more you start talking about speed on the instrument, alternate picking becomes really, really important. So for the most part, I've just been encouraging us to use all down picks. Now the reason we might want to use something like alternate picking is if I wanted to play a little bit faster, which again is something that comes in time, so I'm not expecting us to play anything up to speed, but if I wanted to play this faster, for one, you can see my right hand's moving a lot when I down pick, and that's probably the fastest that I can get it, right? Because I'm not utilizing the motion of when I would be lifting my pick back up. Whereas with alternate picking, you can see it's a much more natural flow because as I pick up my hand, I'm using that to get the note. Right? And in doing that, that's how I'm going to end up getting speed on this instrument. So, like I said, I don't expect us to run through our minor pentatonic scales or anything up to that speed, but it is important to introduce the concept of alternate picking because there are going to be riffs and licks and parts of your playing that are going to need it as you go on. So, this is going to be the little lick that we're going to talk about, and we will do it with a click track, but it's just to introduce the topic. It's just a simple little reoccurring pattern that would all be in kind of an A minor key. Right? And it's used, like I said, in a bunch of different styles of music, but basically what I'm doing here is just trying to ingrain this alternate picking into my right hand. So before we do this lick, I'm going to walk through just a really couple basic exercises that I like to do in conjunction with when I talk about alternate picking. So the first exercise I like to do is really, really simple. It's actually not even going to really involve our left hand at all. All I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate pick 4 notes on each string. And as I'm going up and down, we want to avoid this. A lot of times when I see people start alternate picking, they'll have their pick too deep in the string, and when they pick up, they kind of lose their place with their hand, and then they have to come back. And they're almost thinking it as like these very deliberate motions. We want to think a lot more precise when we do it. You can see when I'm doing it, again, just like any professional athlete, when you watch them do something, at a very precise and high speed, usually they're trying to be more aerodynamic, they're trying to be more precise with their rhythms and with what they're doing, and that's exactly what we're trying to replicate. So I'm really not moving my hand a lot, and I'm not forcing my hand to go through this. A lot of times when we hear somebody playing something faster, we, immediately think, oh, they're just like, picking their hand really hard and putting a lot of energy. They're actually a lot of times being lighter because they know just a little bit of momentum in the right direction will go a long way. So I'm just going to go through and slowly alternate pick each string. As I do it, I'm trying to keep my pick in place. I'm just looking for a good sound. I'm making sure that I'm not forcing my pick out of space. And part of that too is, if you remember when I talked about holding a pick, I'm not holding my pick out here, because if I do that, then I'm going to have the inclination, again, to not be able to be in these specific spots with my pick, and also to be too deep under the string, so that the amount of energy it would take to push through the string is going to have me losing position in my hand. Also, as I alternate pick, like I talked about, I have my wrist and my forearm on the guitar. That way, I'm not just hovering, because if I'm hovering and I shift my elbow a little bit, then I'm going to lose the place of my pick. So all of that information is kind of coming together. Like I said, I have this tiny little exercise where I just alternate pick each string at my own pace. Doesn't need to be with a metronome. It's just so I can get that feeling under my hands. And again, it's going to be slower for you at first as well. Now the other thing that I like to do, and this is kind of a weird exercise, but it teaches me something very specific, is I try to play just this high E string as fast as I can to get this kind of consistent pulse. Now, this is gonna sound super sloppy, and it's not something that I'm aiming to like play so I can, you know, use it within a song or anything. But the reason I do this, and I would encourage you to try to do this, is if you have to play something this fast, you're not gonna be able to do these big drastic movements. You're not gonna be able to play this correctly if your pick's too far down. So when I do something like this, like I said, we're not gonna be able to get up to that speed, but if you try to get as fast as you can, you're gonna see you can only do these little, really precise movements, and you can't have your pick too far down. So when I do that, it's just to encourage myself to go, okay, let me look at my hand. When I do something like this, I see how small the movement actually is within my hand. And I can also get comfortable with how deep my pick is actually going to be within the strings. So when I combine those two things together, that's what I know is going to give me a good alternate picking technique. So let's hear this lick over the backing track, and then we're going to break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our little lick that we're kind of playing through this. So what I'm doing here is I'm using 3 notes within my A minor pentatonic scale and my open E string. So I'm starting out with my first finger on the 5th fret of the high E string, and I'm gonna play 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm playing the 5th fret, and then I'm lifting my finger up so that the 3 following notes are gonna be the high E string. And that's going to be the pattern for this whole thing. I'm going to play a fretted note followed by 3 open E strings. Now, I was using my first finger, my ring finger, and my pinky finger. If you want to just use your first finger so that you can concentrate on your right hand, you can definitely do that because this is more of a right hand exercise. So to start off, I have the 5th fret, 1 and 2 and. Now I'm on the 7th fret, so I'm going to play 3 and 4 and. Now I'm on the 8th fret, 1 and 2 and then I go back down to the 7th fret, 3 and 4 and. So if I was to just play the fretted notes without worrying about these open notes, that's basically my pattern there, and then it repeats. I'm going 5, 7, 8, 7. And if I was to do that with the open notes, 5, 7, 8, 7. So again, when I'm doing this, I'm focusing on making sure, because this is an even numbered phrase, this is the other really great thing with alternate picking, is you'll notice 1 and 2 and. Just like I talked about my foot earlier being a really good reference point for my 8th notes, every time I pick down, if I'm picking 8th notes, 1 and 2 and, I know it's going to be on a number. Every time I pick up, I know it's going to be on the and of a beat. 1 and 2 and. So if somebody said, I want you to accent the and of every beat on something, that might sound like a really hard thing to do, but if I'm alternate picking, I know I just need to accent the up note. Right? So this is another reason that I absolutely love alternate picking, and I always encourage people to do it. Again, it can be something that happens a little bit more in the intermediate stages of guitar playing, but it's always important to introduce it early on so that we have it as a reference point. When I'm internalizing this as an alternate picking, exercise, or I'm internalizing that my rhythm is connected with this, I'm able to better understand my instrument in a more physical sense, because that's what I'm always trying to do with this instrument. I don't want to be thinking as much when I'm playing. I want my hands to kind of really do a lot of the talking for me. And when you're alternate picking, a lot of times being able to feel the and of a beat, being able to feel those accents, your hand is really ingrained in it. And in doing that, you're much more connected with the rhythm. And in my head, I'm not going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm letting my hand actually be the metronome that kind of keeps me in place. So again, with this exercise, I'm just focusing on getting a good sound out of each note and really focusing on my right hand. So if this is giving us too much trouble, I might just start out with my right hand, trying to make sure I can get consistent notes. And again, when I'm playing up and down, I'm not thinking, let me go down, now up, now down and up. I'm almost thinking about going down and then just lifting my hand back into position. And as I lift my hand back into position, I'm playing that note. And again, this is a great lick because you hear this a lot of times when people do, I associate this a lot with Eddie Van Halen when he'll do Eruption or something like that. Right? It kind of has this really cool, it's something that we can expand upon, especially as we develop our alternate picking. Again, our exercise isn't to do that, but it's just to show that this exercise has a lot of room for growth in it, and we can do a lot of really cool stuff in it if we stay persistent. But again, all we're focusing on is getting all of those notes to ring out so we can hone in our alternate picking and only worry about it on one string, so it kind of simplifies things. So let's hear it once more over that click track. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, that's our whole exercise. I'm just working on getting these two hands talking. I'm always trying to simplify things, as I've talked about throughout this course. If I'm having trouble with my left hand, I'm just going to simplify and do my right hand. Or if I have the pattern together, but I'm just not quite up to that click track speed, I can slow down this practice section to 75% or 50% just so I can get everything talking. So again, work on this. This isn't something that is necessarily going to creep up immediately in everything that you do in guitar playing when you're beginning, because a lot of times we're just worrying about downstrokes and trying to keep it simple. But as you progress, especially into the immediate stages, alternate picking plays a really, really important role in your melodic and single note playing.